Welcome back, everybody. I'm very excited. Our next talk is called Diversity Desired, how media makers can implement diversity into their companies. So in this panel, we discuss diversity and how far it's faring in Germany and also in the international media rooms, and productions. What else can be done to become more diverse, and of course, what solutions already exist to promote diversity within teams? So I'm very happy to welcome Chiponda Chimbelu, journalist by the Deutsche Welle. His work focuses on diversity and inclusion within content. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
And of course, Susanne Eigner, Managing Director of Discovery, responsible for the markets in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg.
Thank you very much.
And on remote, hello, welcome, Miranda Holt, journalist and external partners lead for the BBC's 50-50 Equality Project. Hello. I think we can't hear you, but maybe with this little technical problem will be solved in a sec.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, perfect. So maybe first question to you, Miranda Holt. You did a lot for women on TV back in 2017 with the BBC's 50-50 Equality Project. Tell us more about the idea. What does diversity mean in this context?
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to this. I'm sorry I can't be in Munich today. So the BBC's 50-50 project started in the newsroom 4 years ago, and we wanted to count how many women we had on our program. We wanted to have more, but we weren't sure how many there were. So we just started counting every day, every week, every month. And that was the way of seeing how you could increase the number of women on air. And then this project expanded to all of the news teams, and now 690 teams across the BBC, not just in news, but also children's programming and drama and entertainment, all follow we use spreadsheets to count the number of women on air and to increase the number. And some people are aiming to 50-50 to reflect society, and others are just trying to make progress. But by collecting the data, you can effect change. And the other key thing about the way we implement this is to only count what you can control. So the people that make the programs feel they have some way of influencing the numbers to change increase the number of women on air. But we're all journalists, so the best person gets on air. And that's the simple way that we have done this to increase women across the BBC. And we have 120 partners around the world that also do this. I'm delighted to see Chipondo on the panel too. We're working with Deutsche Welle and many of the ARD network media houses to do this as well.
So when we are talking about collecting the data, are you happy with the status quo for, of course, regional broadcasts today?
Yes. So for us, we're trying to get to 50-50, not 60-40 women, but 50-50. But for us, the idea of success would be even more teams, to have 100% of all the BBC content makers follow this, and to expand it to other broadcasters around the world. And it applies, anybody that makes content can count it. So we can, it applies to people doing internal communications, external communications, events, speakers at panels like this. You can count it. But it's not about, it's about content, what you see or hear or read. It's not so much about the workforce. That's a different program, although it applies as well to the workforce.
Chiponda Chimbelu, the Deutsche Welle decided to appoint 5 colleagues with very different cultural and professional backgrounds to the editorial team. Can you tell us some more about it, and maybe also what's behind the scenes?
Well, I joined this team, the editorial board, when then our new editor-in-chief, Manuela Kasper-Claridge, came up with the idea of having 5 colleagues, like you mentioned. And the idea was basically for a group of people from different parts of the world who have, of course, a lot of journalistic experience with the Deutsche Welle to serve as a sounding board and to have as diverse a team as possible, so that it would also reflect the kind of work environment we have. As you know, we have like 32 languages at the Deutsche Welle, and that was the idea. And so essentially we meet on a regular basis, at least once a week. We have, as you normally would these days, a virtual call. And then, of course, we also have regular exchanges. And then, of course, because of the fact that the team is so diverse, what we've had is a lot of input from colleagues who then come to us with questions, whether it's questions about language, following the killing of George Floyd, what kind of language did we want to use? How do you write, Schwarz in German? Do you want to write, how do you talk about people who are black in German? There's special words for that, and that's something we had to deal with. Even for our English editors, we had to speak about that, because we know AP also made some Associated Press. They also came up with some, changes in terms of language as well. And so all those are questions that we deal with. And so we talk about language, dealing with disability or LGBTQ issues and a lot of other editorial issues. And of course, the fact that we have a team that is very diverse makes it much easier for people who may look like me or
feel comfortable.
Exactly, to feel comfortable. And there's others who, obviously, having a diverse team means that you have different people who can be approached, and those people have direct contact with the editor-in-chief. And that was the purpose of this. And this was an additional thing. It was an out-of-the-box idea. It was not part of the official Deutsche Welle structures, but she came up with this, and that has enabled a lot of inclusion in terms of what we do at Deutsche Welle since then.
And did you came up with maybe also other kind of topics when you were these 5 people from all around the world?
Most of what we do is, of course, discussing questions that colleagues have, dealing with editorial content. And really, the ideas are there to come up with answers to questions that are going on within the editorial departments, and coming up with guidelines and recommendations. We have very interesting discussions, I must add, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun for someone like me who only worked in one department at Deutsche Welle to be able to deal with questions that affect 32 languages, and also, of course, to think about how different you can apply some of the guidelines we have, because, of course, there are also cultural differences to think of. So that's what's fascinating about.
So maybe last question, and then I'm going to skip to you, Susanne Eigner. In which aspects does Deutsche Welle needs to make more of an effort, maybe, to become more diverse? Or is the Deutsche Welle like a pioneer in its team, in its broadcast system?
I would like to think that we are a pioneer in Germany in lots of ways. I mean, I think we're definitely one of the most diverse media houses in this country. Of course, I think in terms of certain levels of the organization could be more diverse. I think in terms of women, Deutsche Welle is probably one of the leaders. So, men, women. That's definitely not an issue for Deutsche Welle in terms of leadership, but I think we could definitely have more people of color or maybe non-German backgrounds within senior management. So I think that's something that is being worked on and being discussed at the organization, and making sure that people get qualified, or we think about what we consider the areas of competencies should be, because of course speaking German has been one big deal in the past, and that has also been a barrier for a lot of people. And we, as an international broadcaster, have to consider whether that's always necessary.
Yes. Of course. Susanne Eigner, with Mosaic, the Discovery Media Group, you're focusing its previous commitment in a series of initiatives. Could you talk a little bit more about the idea behind it?
Yes. So maybe let me start a little bit before Mosaic to understand why we created Mosaic, which is the name for our global diversity, equity and inclusion project. So the topic of diversity and equity and inclusion was always very important for Discovery as a global organization. So it's part of our culture, it's part of our corporate values. But we did realize that sometimes it just gets stuck in the organization. So it's not being pushed through the entire organization. So everybody actually has to deal with it. Because for us it is just super important, and we absolutely believe in the variety of thoughts, in the variety of perspectives, and that the most innovative and creative ideas come from this variety, no matter which variety. Now, there's many definitions of variety. And about a year ago, our global leadership came up with the idea of Mosaic. And Mosaic basically is different initiatives starting from unconscious bias, content diversity, supplier diversity, gender diversity, and so on and so on. So it's like 6, 7 different initiatives that are now being pushed into the organization. And that means that every single region, every single country manager, like I am for GSA and Benelux, actually has the task to come up with a couple of ideas, maybe 2 or 3 that are manageable still, because you can't deal with everything at the same time. I mean, let's be honest, can't change the entire world. But we can change what we can change and what we have in our control and push forward. So we have ambassadors in the organization that are volunteers and said, hey, I want to work with you, with the management on those topics, and task forces and working groups. And every region comes up with like 2 or 3 topics that we're really measuring, that we're defining over the next 2 to 3 years. And in the end, we really want to have an outcome. For Germany, for example, we have identified talent recruitment as a topic, and content diversity. I mean, we are a content house. We're producing content on a daily basis. And that is what we're now working on with the team here. And what is so super important to us is that it's not just a couple of words that are written in a corporate booklet or hanging next to the elevator when you come into the office. It's really something that we want to live and want to make people aware that it is important for us. And
so
and
do you have any, yes, very great. So, but do you have any examples maybe? How far are you with the implementation?
So example for talent management. We're currently evaluating how attractive are we actually as an employer. We know that it's important for us, but I don't think that we're talking enough about externally. And there's a massive war for talent out there, especially for young people. They're not only looking at titles anymore and at money that you can earn, but also at corporate values. So this is something where we have a working group that is actually rethinking our employer branding. And that is starting from what does our website look like? How do we phrase our advertisements when we're looking for new talent? How do we actually develop the already existing talent? And that also then has, as a consequence, looking at the male-female balance in management, in the teams, and so on and so on. So this is one of the topics that we're very concretely working on at the moment. Talent recruitment.
So maybe it also fits to an aspect of you, Miranda Holt. BBC also is talking about the socioeconomic diversity. What does it mean in particular, and how did the BBC realize that there was still maybe some catching up at this topic?
So in the UK, there is a big discussion in society about socioeconomic diversity, about making sure that people from all backgrounds get, are portrayed on the media, but also want to work for an organisation like the BBC. So for 50-50, we're talking about the content rather than the workforce, but we're beginning to think about what the right target might be. We're reflecting discussions about for the people who work at the BBC might be more attracted from a wider cross-section of background. And for us at the BBC, like many of the ARD networks, we're funded, they're funded by a tax, but we're funded by a licence fee, which we ask all of UK society to pay. So we need to represent them, not only 50% women, but we also have a target for ethnicity, for people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and from disability, for people with a disability to be in our content. And for socioeconomic diversity, we are beginning to discuss how do you define it? It's what is it your parents' background, or where you live at the moment, these kind of, and the way you attract those kind of people is exactly as Suzanne was saying. For Discovery, we're having the same discussions at the BBC. How do you appeal to a highly competitive, entry-level young people who might want to come and work in the media? How does the BBC attract them?
So you define,
appeal to them?
yes, thank you. So you define the world of talents maybe in a new way?
I think so, yes. I think, in a generation ago at the BBC, the majority of people that were working there were white, middle-class men who might have gone to Oxford or Cambridge, the elite universities in the UK. And now that's definitely not the case. We are very concerned that we are appealing to everybody, that we have many different ways of entering to work at the BBC through apprenticeship schemes and trainee schemes and accelerator schemes to promote people from different backgrounds, diversity in every aspect, up the system, and to feel that they can not only start, but they want to continue working at the BBC.
Mm-hmm. So maybe also, Susanna Eigner, what kind of obstacles are you dealing with? How you recruit talents?
So I think the one thing is really that people can choose where they're going to. If they want to work in media, there are so many companies out there that are looking for young talents. So we really have to make us more attractive to those talents, and that is not super easy. And I think an obstacle. How should I phrase that? I think when you have a lot of opportunities to choose from, you have to make yourself more shine and really be credible about it. And a fundamental topic for us is that our people that are already working for Discovery, we give them the room and the time to really work on those topics from diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a number of team members that are creating something like a women's network, a pride network that deals with LGBTQ topics. We have a word network that deals with foreign language. For example, alone here in Munich, we have 200 people sitting, and they come from 10, 12 different nations. And so they have come up with the idea, why don't we, I'm Italian, can I teach you Italian if you want to in the evening? So giving these people the room to really live also their passions that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion is also super important for us. And I think spreading this word outside of our organization is super important to the new talents that are hopefully coming to our organization.
And do you ask sometimes yourself, or as a company, of course, how can we develop formats under the aspect of diversity?
Yes, we do. So content diversity is also actually a topic. That is a super important one because, and a very interesting one, because when you look at the brands of our channels, for example, DMAX. DMAX is a channel, I'm sure if everybody knows what DMAX is. It's a channel that predominantly focuses on a male audience. And that is as a consequence that also the talents that are on air are mainly male. They are characters that are credible, like ambassadors for what they're doing in the outdoor segment or in survival or cars or whatever. And we had long discussions with the program and content team if it does make sense to make that more female, because it might just completely dilute the core brand value of our channel. So it is a very sometimes thin ice to move on if you touch a topic like that. So that is not super easy. Very interesting discussions internally, believe me.
Miranda talked about the BBC is funded by license fees. Deutsche Welle is funded by German government. What do you think works better?
License fee or the German or the taxes? I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that question.
But maybe when we take a look at developing, and implementing more diversity into broadcast channels, what do you think?
I think I mean, I mean, we were talking about challenges as well before. I think what works better is if you have data, if you have diversity data and you can match it up, which is what 50/50 kind of tries to do as well. It's just a start to quantifying what's happening with the content. I think having demographic data and looking at your content and how diversity appears in that based on the demographic data would be very helpful. One of the challenges working on the European continent is that we don't always have the possibility to collect data on race, ethnicity, or religion, sexual orientation without jumping through the hoops or without like really having a hard time doing it. And that is a huge challenge that a lot of media organizations in Europe face, and this is something that's been a topic in some of the discussions I've been involved in with the European Broadcasting Union. And that's something that is a huge challenge because we need to be able to match what our population looks like. And if we know what the target audience is, what that we're aiming for, we can try and figure out, if we need to have, 15% of people with disabilities, or if we need to see, 20% of people from low-income backgrounds, which is extremely important. But if you don't have those numbers, it is extremely hard, and I think that's something that we need to really discuss. And I don't know, I think Miranda touched on that a little bit with a low-income background, because I think the BBC did something about that as well with the numbers.
You want to add something to this, Miranda?
Yes, I mean, we're having a big discussion. What is the target for people of low-income backgrounds? Because, as I say, is it what you earn now, or what you your parental background, or their educational level, or your educational level? What is it? What is it that is an attainable thing that is right, that diversifies content, but doesn't become so impossible that you're setting targets that no program maker can ever get to. I mean, one difficult thing that we are wrestling with at the BBC is a target to increase disability. There are many different definitions in the UK from the census that we have just undertaken. These are government statistics, but we are trying to have 12% disability of people working in the BBC, but also in content. But you can see that 50/50 is a perception-based way of gathering data, but you can't tell. Many disabilities are invisible or undeclared. So how do you know if the people that you are getting on your programs, have a disability? And also with, ethnic minority background, for instance, in London, for program makers, the target is 50% because it's a very diverse city with about half the people are from ethnic minority background, whereas in the rural areas of the English, countryside, there's far fewer people from an ethnic minority background. So we have a target for 5% of content on TV, radio, and online, and BBC local radio, for instance.
Okay.
But, it is, you're having to deal, Chiponda's right.
Yeah.
You need a benchmark for the data as to what your own broadcast house target is.
I'm so sorry. We are running out of time. That was really like a rush again for me. Thank you so much for your expertise, Chiponda Chimbulu, Deutsche Welle, Susanne Eigner, Managing Director of Discovery, and of course Miranda Holt, Journalist and External Partners Lead for the BBC's 50/50 Equality Project. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.